I'm Liz McCutcheon. I'm Liz McCutcheon and I'm the Chief Executive of Inspirent, and I'm joined by Helen Logan, who's a Project Director. Also on the call is Donna McLeod, whom you've just heard, and we have Rachel Sharp and Heather Ross. Rachel's one of our business growth partners and Heather is the Programme Administrator. So as you may just have heard, the session is being recorded today and we will share the recording on the website and after the event today. Please use the chat function as I go through the presentation if you have any questions, and we'll take questions at the end. So the agenda for today is to do an overview of the 4 ecosystem grant funds. We'll do a review of the chat questions at the end, and Dawn will do that for me. She's monitoring the chat as we go through the call. And there'll be a live opportunity for question and answers at the end in case the chat questions haven't covered what you wanted to ask. And then we'll talk you through what the next steps are. So I'll start off with the key dates, which are really important, and I'll share this again at the end because we need you to understand the dates so that nobody falls foul of the deadline. So the application's opened on the 26th of February 2026, and the deadline is 5 p.m. on the 26th of March. Now that's a hard stop. Applications will not be accepted after 5 p.m. on the 26th of March. Decisions on the awardees for the grants will be made in May 2026. And another crucial date for you is all project delivery must be complete by the 31st of March 2027. So there are 4 funds which have been launched on the 26th of February. They are the Ecosystem Fund, the Community Fund, the Pathways Fund, and the Entrepreneurial Education Fund. So let me talk you through each of those funds. So the purpose of the Ecosystem Fund is to strengthen Scotland's entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that's a system that supports founders across Scotland. And the aim of it is to build networks and connections across our entrepreneurial ecosystem. Scotland's made up of small to medium enterprises, and it's in all our interest to encourage entrepreneurship and have a strong ecosystem to support those entrepreneurs who want to start. So it's about delivering strategic collaboration and support system-wide across Scotland for founders. And the fund is from £10,000 to £40,000. The second fund is a community fund that provides grants of up to £9,999. That's about supporting grassroots activity across our communities and enabling local entrepreneurial networks. We do encourage first-time applicants, so people who maybe never have applied for a fund before. And this is about strengthening your local ecosystem engagement. So it might be a small community group, perhaps an underrepresented group who want to get together to discuss the opportunities that they may have and the barriers they may have to entrepreneurship and how in the community they can support each other. And that's just a small example. The Pathways Fund is up to £75,000, and that's very much about widening participation in entrepreneurship. And it targets underrepresented groups who face specific systemic barriers. So, for example, women, it's well publicised that women can often face barriers that others don't because they have certain challenges and issues in terms of accessing funding, caring responsibilities. We may also find that people who have disabilities or who have had are neurodivergent or who have had care experience often face barriers that the average person might not face. So this Pathways Fund is about delivering inclusive approaches to ensure that everybody across our nation has the opportunity to think about entrepreneurship as a career path for them. And the Entrepreneurial Education Fund, their grants of up to £150,000. And that's about embedding entrepreneurial mindset among our young people from the earliest opportunity. So it's to support structured education programmes for 3 to 18-year-olds and in strengthening our youth enterprise pipeline. So across our institutions, we want to have an entrepreneurial mindset so that when young people exit education, the entrepreneurship and the ability to start a business is not something that's foreign to them, but very much in their mindset. So we want to be very clear about what the fund is and what the fund isn't. It is a Scottish Government grant programme, and it is designed to strengthen the entrepreneurial ecosystem across Scotland. It is focused on underrepresented groups, and it seeks to create wider impact, support and delivery of initiatives through to the 31st of March 2027. What it isn't for, it's not for funding start-up activity or supporting individual businesses to start up. It's not for commercial expansion for capital purposes for the existing business base, and it's not to support cash flow for existing businesses. And a key thing to note, it's not for retrospective activity. So if you've delivered a programme previously and want to apply for that to be retrospectively funded, then that won't be accepted. Any activity that the grants will fund will be future-based, and there will also not be a duplication of existing activity. So who should be applying for these grants? The grants are very much aimed at a whole range of individuals and institutions, so that we are absolutely supporting entrepreneurship across all of Scotland. So we're looking at ecosystem builders. These are organisations that support founders, start-ups. So, organisations that run incubations, accelerator programmes, start-up programmes. These are eligible to apply for this. Industry bodies can apply. So you might be from food and drink, and you may decide that you want to run something that will encourage more people to start up producing in Scotland, then you can apply for that. Third sector and non-profit organisations are also eligible to apply. For the education fund, and not just that, but that's a key part of it. Education providers, schools, universities and colleges can apply for some of the funds, not necessarily all of them. So it's worth checking the guidance notes. And established private sector companies can apply for the funds as well. And a key important one, particularly for the community fund, informal networks and individuals can apply for the fund if they're not constituted or they don't have a formal network. So to be eligible to apply for any of the funds, you must be based in Scotland or have a significant Scottish operation. If there's a collaborative or partnership bid going in for a grant, there must be a lead organisation nominated, and that ensures that we can work with the lead organisation rather than more than one organisation for the fund. You must be able to demonstrate good working practices if that's applicable to you. So as a business, you must evidence fair work practices, show a commitment to net zero, and have no flags or sanctions registered against your organisation or as an individual. So if you're an individual applying, then these things won't apply to you, i.e. the fair work practice or the commitment to net zero. If you're a business and you have a notice in the Gazette, for example, to say that you're potentially going into administration, that would be a red flag, and that would fail at due diligence. So these are just things to think about when you're applying. So there are a range of eligible and ineligible spend for each of the funds. I'm not going to go through them all today. On our website, and there's a snapshot there of the website, which is ecosystemfund.co.uk. That then takes you to that window, which allows you to click onto each of or any of the four funds. Within each of the four funds, there are specific guidance and frequently asked questions relative to that fund. And it's important that you make yourself familiar with those so that you're aware of what funds you can apply for, what's eligible spend and what's ineligible spend. And the terms and conditions can be found in there as well. And I can't stress that enough. That will really support your ability to put in a strong application if you fully understand the guidance, the frequently asked questions and the terms and conditions of the grant. So when you're choosing the fund, I'm assuming you've read the guidance and the frequently asked questions, and you'll be able to think about whether the fund is the correct one for you. So is it a grassroots, very local fund, quite broad? Maybe you're an individual or just a small community group, then the community fund would be something that you would consider. If it's a much bigger project and you're based in infrastructure in terms of the ecosystem and infrastructure in Scotland, and you might, for example, you might be a college that wants to run a startup event or network, then the ecosystem fund would be your chosen fund. Pathways, again, that's very targeted to underrepresented groups. So if you're thinking, I could do a project here for women or for an ethnic minority group or people who have suffered from not suffered from, but who have had barriers that have prevented them from accessing entrepreneurship, then the Pathways Fund would be the one that you would consider. And if you're operating among young people, 3 to 18-year-olds, and you want to start to do an education piece on entrepreneurship for young people, then the Education Fund would be the one that you would consider. So the assessors will be looking for very specific things in your application related to what you've read in the terms and conditions and the guidance and the eligibility criteria. They'll look to see that your application aligns to the fund that you are bidding for. So if you're bidding for something that's got nothing to do with education, but you're applying to the education fund, then that's not going to align to the entrepreneurial education, and therefore you're in the wrong fund. What's very important for all of the funds is that you're very clear about who your target beneficiaries are. If you've developed a program or you've developed a network or you're planning to develop a network, who are you targeting and how are you intending to help them? That's very, very important that you're very clear about that. You also have to be able to feasibly deliver the model. So as an extreme example, if you're going to run a night class for young mums to deliver startup support, then that's not feasible. It's not feasible for them and it wouldn't be feasible for you. So you want to make sure that it's something that's achievable and that's reasonable. And the other key thing to think about, it has to have value for money. What are you giving back in terms of the support for entrepreneurial startup in terms of the cost to what you're applying to your project? So think about that, work it out and ensure that it's offering the British taxpayer or the the Scottish taxpayer and your target beneficiaries is value for money. It's also very important that you're actually plugging an ecosystem gap and that you can clarify that in your application. If you're replicating support that's already there and that is already funded, there's absolutely no point in putting that in your application. Your support must be addressing a gap in the ecosystem. So be very, very clear about that. And the outputs and outcomes that you want to deliver to the beneficiaries and to the entrepreneur system in Scotland must be very specific and very measurable. They can't be vague. You should be able to articulate what it is you're trying to achieve with your project or with your network. And it has to be realistic in scope. It has to be similar to the feasible. It has to be deliverable, and it has to be relevant to the entrepreneurship programs across, or the aims across the funds that you're going to be applying for. And the budget has to be aligned to the activity. So budget has to be relative to what you're actually doing. You have to be able to define each of your milestones and what the spend is for that activity so that we can clearly see whether it is that value for money. And you have to be able to demonstrate that you have the capability, the skills and the experience to deliver your project and your model. So be very clear about that and think about that before you fill out the application. So the application process is very clear. The very first check that will be done upon submission of your application will be eligibility checks. So that's our due diligence. We'll be checking to ensure that your organisation is eligible to apply and that you are a suitable potential awardee of whatever grant you're applying for. There are a team of assessors who will review the proposals against the assessment criteria relative to each of the funds. And again, I can't stress that enough. Make sure that what you're writing in your project does align to the criteria of that fund, because you will be scored on that. Following the assessment, there will be a validation panel who will meet to review the assessor scores and agree the final distribution of each of the funds. And that will be done according to the quality of the proposals and the availability of the funds. The funds are not endless, so there will be a limitation onto the number of applications that will actually receive the award. Retrospective funding is a key part of this grant, so you must be able to pay costs up front. So if you've developed a project and it's going to cost, you've got 10 milestones and they're £1,000 each, you have to be able to fund that milestone and then retrospectively claim that money, drawing down the funding for each milestone. And that will require evidence of the payments that you've made, and that evidence will be in the form of invoices and the money coming out of your bank account. Any decision on who's awarded for the funds is final. Because of the stringent assessment process, there is no opportunity to appeal here. So I'm going to remind you again of the key dates. The applications are already open. They opened on the 26th of February. You can start an application, you can save it, and you can exit the platform, and you can go back into the platform and rework on that application. The deadline is 5 p.m. on the 26th of March, and that is a hard stop. There will be no other applications accepted beyond 5 p.m. on the 26th of March. The decisions on who the successful awardees are will be notified in May 2026, and all project delivery must be complete by the 31st of March 2027. So I'm going to go to Donna now and see are there any questions in the chat, and I'm sure there will be. And Donna will go through the questions, and if Donna hasn't been able to address them, then we'll do that now. Over to you, Donna. Thank you.
Liz, that's amazing. Thank you so much. We've had some fantastic questions, and I think the beauty of them is that they will be relevant for many people on the call. So it's great just to take the chance to go through each one at a time. Now, I will do my best to answer them, but we've also got expertise of the other team members. There's one particularly about finance that I will ask our finance manager to help with. So the first great question that we had is, can my business apply for more than one of the 4 funds if the proposed projects are distinct from one another? Fantastic question. Yes, you absolutely can apply so long as you meet the eligibility for each grant fund, which is clearly outlined on the website. And also, as you've highlighted yourself, Ben, that the projects are distinct from each other. So just make sure you read the terms and conditions and guidance notes on the website for each of the funds. And if you feel you're eligible, then absolutely please do. You can also apply for the same fund more than once, but it has to be a very different project for each one. Please note that if you are successful with your application, because these schemes are usually oversubscribed, they're incredibly popular, only one of your projects or applications is able to be approved within one grant scheme. However, you could potentially be approved for different projects under the different schemes. So just to clarify that, if you submitted 2 applications in the ecosystem fund, for instance, for 2 different projects, if one of them was approved, it would only be able to be one. But if you applied for the ecosystem fund and say the education fund for a different project, potentially, theoretically speaking, both of those could be approved. So I hope that answers it. Liz, Helen, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you've done a great job with that, Donna. It's really clear, and as you've referenced, it's also in the guidance notes as well.
Perfect. Thanks very much. The next question, this is an interesting one. I'm loving this question. When your project fits into the criteria for more than one fund, how should you choose the one that you think it may work best in? The best advice I can give you on this is to please read each page of the grant information on the website, because there are some intricacies, slight differences between some of the funds. So even if you think that your project would be eligible for both, you might realize on reading the finer details that you might realize which one's more appropriate for you. So I would just read the details. There's information on the terms and conditions in the FAQs and also the guidance section. So if you read them carefully, and then feel free to ask us if there's anything in particular that you're thinking. But generally, I would advise you to read those terms and conditions and FAQs in detail, and hopefully that would answer the question for you. Liz, Helen, any input on that one?
I think that's a great response, Donna, because there are nuances in each of the funds, and it's really important. And there are different aims for each of the funds, and there are really important nuances. So I would encourage you to dig into that. And as Donna rightly said, on each of the fund pages, there is an inquiry email address there. So if after checking all of that, you're still not 100% sure, then you can submit a question through the email, although we cannot advise you on which fund to apply for. Ultimately, that has to be your decision, unless you were saying, I'm going to apply for a pathways type project, but we knew you were going completely to the wrong fund, then we would advise you on that. But you read the nuances and be very, very clear about what it is you're trying to achieve.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Liz. The next question from Jennifer. I love this question. This is another one that would apply to a number of people, I'm sure. Can applications from last year be adapted and resubmitted? Absolutely. Please consider that, but just be mindful that the guidance may be different. There might be different eligibility and different terms and conditions. So please just make sure that you read it carefully and consider if you want to update it, because times are changing fast. So it might be you might want to adapt the project that you're applying for, but you're more than welcome to submit one that you've previously applied for, so long as it's not one that was awarded funding and it's just a repeat of the same thing. We're obviously looking for gaps to be filled in the ecosystem, so looking for a bit of innovation or something that's not currently being addressed, a need that's not being addressed. So I hope that answers your question. So absolutely, please feel free to resubmit, but just make sure that the eligibility is all those boxes are ticked.
I
Thank you
think
very
that's a
much.
really good question, Donna,
Yeah.
particularly because quite a number of those who applied last year who didn't get an award asked for feedback, and we provided feedback to everyone that asked it. So it, may well be that it was a very high scoring application, but like this year, the pot of money for each fund is not inexhaustible. So, if it was a really good application and you get good feedback, absolutely put it back in. But as Donna said, double check that nothing's changed and the subtleties of it, so that you don't get you don't fall foul of the new terms and conditions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Helen, I'm going to go to your expertise for this one. An amazing question from Candace that I know lots of people will be wondering about. The question is, are we able to include overhead calculations that can be directly attributed to the project's activity within our application? Helen, I'm going to look for your good guidance for this one, please. Thank you.
Yes, within the budget table, there is an opportunity for you to include other costs, which may cover overhead costs, but you have to be able to clearly demonstrate that the overhead costs that you're considering as part of your application and programme delivery can be clearly attributed to that programme. The fund will not cover business as usual expenses, so you have to be very clear that you and demonstrate that any of these costs are specific to the project and not business as usual expenses.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Helen. Really appreciate that. So moving on to the next question from Jennifer. Can staff time be allocated in, or is it external costs only? Another excellent question. Thank you. We fully appreciate that staff may be taken away from their day-to-day tasks to purely focus on projects, or a good amount of their time to be focused on the project that you're awarded grant funding for. You can absolutely include those costs, realistic costs, obviously, that are purely attributable to the new project. We would not cover staff time, as Helen's just mentioned there, from the overhead point of view. We would not cover staff time for day-to-day operation as usual costs. This would have to be staff time that's purely been focused on the new project that you've got grant awarding for. So we'd be looking for things like timesheets and just a link to the milestone as to what the activities are. But yes, that absolutely can be included. Liz, Helen, do you have any other input on that one?
No, but I think that's really important that
Yeah.
it has to be directly attributable to the project, and we will ask for timesheets. We will ask for evidence of that, it's not just a case of, well, I've got 3 people working in the organisation, I'm going to charge their salaries to this. It has to be directly related to the project that you're delivering.
That's excellent. Thanks so much, Liz. I appreciate that. The next one, this is a great question. My business is based just across the border, but have previous Scottish operations and a likely Scottish partner. Would it be better for the education partner to apply rather than ourselves as a private entity? First of all, I would like to say, with regards to the education partner or the private entity, just double check who is eligible to apply with regards to the type of organisation. And also, it explains in the guidance notes that you are more than welcome to apply so long as you have major operations in Scotland. The preference is for organisations and companies, individuals who are based in Scotland, and depending on the scheme that might be critical, but depending on what you're applying for, you may be eligible to apply so long, even if you're across the border, so long as the project is fully focused within and about Scotland. Now, for depending what scheme you're applying for, there may be international elements to that, and that can be considered and eligible. But generally speaking, all the benefits have to be focused on Scotland and the people within Scotland to help the ecosystem here, as per the nature of the Scottish Government funding. Liz and Helen, I'll come to you, ladies, to see if you've got any additional input on that.
I think you've answered that really well, Donna. This is intended to support Scotland's communities, Scotland's entrepreneurs, and the ecosystem here. So going back to the eligibility criteria, they have to be Scottish based or have a significant presence in Scotland. So consider that when you're thinking about collaboration. And that, if you've got a partner who's down, south of the border, that doesn't preclude an application, but the lead application and the beneficiaries of the project have to be for Scottish people.
Amazing. Thanks, Liz. And that's just made me think, just to highlight, just to repeat that whoever is the lead applicant will be the main contact going forward. So please ensure that whoever is applying for the funding, the email address that you use is the main contact for the project for the duration of it. We fully appreciate things change. However, it would be preferable for the person who's going to be leading that project to be the main applicant. So hopefully that helps. An excellent question from Bronwyn. Is there a PDF or Word copy of the application form? I'm going to pass this to Liz and Helen.
Yes, we can provide that for you. Both of those, either a PDF or a Word document. I would suggest that you drop an email across to us using the ecosystem inquiries mailbox, and we'll get that emailed out to you, Bronwyn.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And another question. These are all brilliant questions, and I genuinely appreciate it because it's useful for everybody else to get answers to these as well. How long does the drawdown of funding take after invoices, etc., is submitted, etc.? Great question. We do our best to have a really prompt turnaround time. There is a maximum of 10 working days within which we would usually turn things around. However, we do go through our own due diligence and make sure that you have provided all the information that we require, which you will be informed about if you're approved for your funding application. So we may come back to you with queries and say, oh, we're missing something from the bank statement, or you still need to submit a timesheet. So it's dependent on how soon you get the information to us, but we certainly work very efficiently to turn things around as quickly as we can within the 10 working day period. Liz, Helen, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that if your application is successful, there'll be a further webinar on how the claim process works, so we can demonstrate the platform to you, how you submit a claim, the evidence that's required. To confirm Donna's correct, 10 working days is the turnaround for making the payment to you. It's usually within 5 working days. And it's something else to consider when you're submitting your application. Your project is broken down into milestones. So you should think about your budget and your cash flow when you're determining those milestones. Once a milestone is complete, you can submit your evidence and claim for the payment against that milestone. So bear that in mind when you're submitting your application.
That's really useful. Thanks very much, Helen. An excellent question here. Will there be any balance of projects across Scotland to support activity in all regions and ensure a spread? I love that question. It's really good, Kirsty. Just to highlight that projects are considered on a case-by-case basis on their individual merits. And one of the main things of the ecosystem funding schemes are to cover as many areas that are underserved at the moment as possible. So that's underserved areas and underserved groups, and quite a number of projects focus on rural areas that are currently underserved, so they will obviously be considered favourably depending which grant scheme you're applying for, what the project's about, but they're not going to basically give funding to people just because they live in a certain area if it's not going to be able to tick the boxes for the fund. Now, these are really, really competitive grants, so it's the ones that provide, basically can tick all the boxes and provide the most potential benefit for their communities that will be considered the most favourably. So I hope that answers the question, Liz. Helen, would you like to come in with anything else there?
I think that was an excellent response, Donna. You're bang on, that in terms of how, quality of project and delivery is absolutely the top area that will be scored. And we do look at a geographical spread in terms of, the rural areas who face barriers that you might not face in the Central Belt or in some of the conurbations. So that is all taken into account when awards are being made. But first and foremost, it's quality and alignment to each of the funds it's been applied for.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Liz. I appreciate that. The next question is an excellent question. Can I double check that the Education Fund has an age limit up to 18 years, please? I believe there are a couple of elements within the guidance notes there, and I'm just going to read this word for word from the notes. We aim to build a sustainable entrepreneurial education system. This fund will be used to enhance the focus on key stages of a young person's development, ensuring a solid foundation at each educational stage, from primary 1 through secondary 6 and onwards into college and university. And I appreciate later on, it does refer to age 3 up until certain levels of the qualification. So I appreciate that. I'm going to pass this to Liz to add to that.
Thanks, Donna. I'm not sure if Andrew Mitchell's on the call, but my understanding is age 18 is the maximum age for it. Goes from the age of 3 to 18, and they're the target audience for the Education Entrepreneurial Fund. I don't know if Andrew Mitchell's on the phone and on the call, and if he is, he's very welcome to pitch in here. But that's what it says in the guidance. It's 3 to 18-year-old for the Entrepreneurial Educational Fund.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So it's obviously with an aim to strengthening them for their later years as well. I'm just going to go on to the next question. How many projects will be funded from each scheme? That's a great question. It's absolutely impossible for anybody to say that because it's down to what individuals are applying for. So you will see from the 4 grant schemes that there is a range of funding you can apply for, and there's a maximum. There's no minimum as such for some of the schemes. There is for one of them, so just double check again, but it really just depends the amount of funding that people are looking for. And even if you request a specific amount of funding, not all those costs may be eligible or awarded, so we really wouldn't know that until final decisions are made. But great question though. Certainly the Scottish Government would be looking for maximum impact for the investment. So the better the projects, then, the more likely they'll hopefully get funding. But again, it's highly competitive. What is the total value available for each of the 4 funds? Again, I would just, Liz has very kindly gone through all that with us today, and I would just guide you to have a look at the instructions. But just to briefly cover them just now, for the Community Fund, there's applications up to £10,000 can be made, and there's no minimum amount on that. So even if you wanted to apply for, say, £500, you would be more than welcome to do that. The Ecosystem Fund runs from £10,000 as a minimum up to £40,000. The Pathways Fund is up to £75,000 maximum. You can obviously apply for a lot less. And the Entrepreneurial Education Fund is £10,000 up to £150,000. Now, there is a slight caveat to that last one, in which if there's any phenomenally outstanding applications, then you could theoretically ask for more funding than that. But because they're trying to fund and support as many great projects as they can, then that would be very rare. That would be very unusual, but it does say that in the instructions. But that's the 4 main schemes and the amounts that you can apply for. So hopefully that helps you.
Can I just come in there, Donna?
Please do,
I
yeah.
think part of the question was how much funding will be
Oh,
distributed.
I see,
Yeah,
sorry.
and we are not we're not given privy to that kind of information in terms of the final budgets. So at this stage, we wouldn't be able to say how many funds will be distributed and how big the pots of funding are. But all awarding will be published. All awardees, I beg your pardon, will be published, so everyone will see who got the funds and how much they got and what their projects were. That will be published on the ecosystem website, so you'll get to see that at some point.
Thanks so much, Liz. That's the two questions there from an anonymous attendee, so that takes care of them both nicely. Thank you. So that was how many projects will be funded, which is impossible to say for the reasons that we've outlined, and what is the total value available for each of the 4 funds. So moving on to the next one, there is a note around not existing staff costs. I am in a university context, and considering the current funding pressures, I need to make judgments about allocating staff time in a trade-off for other things. In order to scale the activity I am planning to put forward, that would include some academic time I need to allocate. Would that be eligible? It's a brilliant question, Thomas.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate what was mentioned earlier, if the staff time is purely focused on the project, obviously their week would be spent doing different things. But if, say, for instance, 2 days a week are spent on the grant, the ecosystem project that you've applied to deliver, then you could get staff time covered under that. Liz, I think you were going to come in there.
Yeah, no, you're doing great there, Donna. I'm not sure what it means by academic time. I don't know if it means research time or actual teaching time, but you're 100% right. If it's attributable to the project, then it's eligible to be applied to the project as a cost.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you so much.
it's hard to know what that definition of academic time means, but whether it's research or teaching time, as long as it's relative to the project, then it's eligible.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas. Please feel free to submit another question if you're looking for more clarity on that. The next question, I have an idea and I've written a business plan for it. Am I eligible to apply for one of the funds like education funds? That's an excellent question. Thank you. Again, we would just encourage you to have a look at the website, please, and have a look at the guidance and the FAQs to see what you need to be eligible to apply, and then you complete an application form. So you will have to provide information on key questions that you will have there. So your business plan could absolutely contribute to the information that would be required for that form. And so long as you're eligible, you would be more than welcome to submit an application. I see somebody's raised their hand there. Are you able to unmute yourself and speak? There's a couple of hands raised, but I'm not able to see them on the system. So I'm going to carry on with the questions just now. And then at the end, please feel free to unmute yourselves and talk. We can do one at a time. A question here from Dan. The demand-driven programme we are considering, in addition to benefiting local entrepreneurs, has potential to attract startups to Scotland. Does business attraction add any value to a proposal? Absolutely. The Scottish Government's particularly interested in investment in Scotland and looking for any innovative ideas and creativity and coming up with things that are not currently delivered. So that sounds absolutely fantastic. And absolutely, there are key ways that the applications will be scored, and that's in line with the guidance and the FAQs about each section, key information that they're looking to have covered. So absolutely, that would definitely sound very positive, so long as it's realistic and you give adequate information around that within the word limit. Sounds amazing. Thank you for asking. Ben, thanks so much. Many thanks for detailed answers so far. Will feedback be available for applications that are not selected for funding? Absolutely, Ben, but you have to request that feedback. Under each of the grant schemes, there is a specific email address for them. So if you email the one, depending who you've applied for, hopefully you wouldn't need to ask. It would be amazing if you could be awarded funding. But if you haven't been awarded funding, then please submit a question to that email asking for feedback, and we'd very much appreciate that. Mali, coming on to you. Can applications for the Entrepreneurial Educational Fund be focused on higher and further education, or is it primarily for younger learners? I'm going to go to Liz and Helen, for this one?
The guidance here, Marley, is it's up to 18 years of age. So that fund is aimed at beneficiaries who fall into the age bracket of 3 to 18 years old.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Liz. An anonymous attendee, good afternoon. If you have a project to buy into one fund with a certain scope size, but have the capacity for same or similar project to have a much larger scope, would this be two submissions on the same fund? You are more than welcome to submit more than one application to the same fund, but the projects would have to be significantly different. It would not be eligible if you were applying for something that was the same but just a different size. It would have to be significantly a different project or aiming at different target market, for instance. Liz, do you have any other input on that one?
No, I think you answered that bang on, Donna.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. If anyone's got any additional questions and don't feel that I've answered them properly, please feel free to submit another question and we'll absolutely answer that as we run through these. Bronwyn, should the ecosystem fund application be for projects that benefit all groups stroke characteristics of entrepreneurs, or can they be for targeted groups? Another excellent question, thank you. Absolutely for targeted groups. It would be incredible if you could cover absolutely everybody within a project. That would be seriously impressive, but the list of potential targets are within the grant information on the website. The grant information is outlined there as to who the target groups could potentially be, but please keep an open mind because you may have ideas that are not included in that, and just be mindful of the purpose of each grant scheme and what it's for. But absolutely, it can be specifically for certain targeted groups. The next question, how many projects are you likely to fund under each category? That's great. We've had that question before, which we answered, and it's impossible to say because it depends how much people are applying for and who gets awarded the funding. But each application is judged and scored exactly the same way, and they will all be viewed favourably so long as you meet the eligibility criteria. The next question, thank you very much for submitting it. Can you share how much is available in each fund to give an indication of number of awards available? Again, we've had this question before, but I appreciate asking it. Really just depends on the applications that come in. Liz, do you want to step in on this again? I believe you answered it earlier though.
Yeah, I think it's really clear. I mean, although there's a maximum amount of funding in terms of the value of a fund that you or a grant you can apply for, not everybody's going to apply for 75,000. There's a whole host of variables that feed into the number of applications, and it'd be impossible for us to even guess how many awards will be made until the applications have been read, and we don't have access to say, here's how much money is going to be spent in each of the funds. What I can reassure people of is it will be published once the awards are made.
Amazing, thank you. So we can't give that information specifically, but
absolutely not.
I appreciate you asking. Thank you. Thanks very much, Liz. Pauline, moving on to your question. If we have a project that is currently funded through the Entrepreneurial Education Fund, which we are seeking to continue through the new funding, is this possible? We will ensure that the new project meets the fund criteria, but we have had good outcomes, partnership development and feedback. Therefore, we would be keen to extend and develop through this funding. That's an excellent question. It's written in the guidance that they're really looking for new projects. What the government doesn't want to fund is more of the same, if that makes sense. So if you are looking to make progress on a really successful project, which is amazing and makes sense, they would be looking for significant add-ons to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Donna, I think I would just underline that any funding for future projects would need to expand, improve, or scale the project significantly. It wouldn't just be a continuation of what's currently being delivered under the fund.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Liz. Thomas, appreciate you confirming that we answered your question. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Next question. Is it acceptable that the people within the organisation are paid for delivering the programme, or does it have to be external professionals? Absolutely brilliant question. We've outlined this earlier, but just to highlight, you can potentially use consultants or external professionals, but we would be more than happy to hear you using existing staff. You can include their staff time as a cost, but only if their time is specifically focused on the project. But absolutely, your current staff can be, their skills and knowledge can be used to deliver the program. That's a great question, though. Thank you. Moving on to a question from Suze. I'd like to thank you for pulling all the funds together and for hosting this session. So much easier. Looking forward to getting an application in. I've got to jump off for another call. We'll catch up on the recording. Oh, that's lovely to hear. Jennifer, a question from you. If external costs cannot be defined at the point of application, can an estimate be put in and then actual costs as long as they're less than the estimate to be claimed? I would encourage you to be as realistic as you possibly can. Be as clear. As Helen mentioned earlier, the finance manager, there are boxes for you to fill in for specific costs and how much you think each one is going to cost you. And if it's too general, then you may find that you're completely off and you really underestimate the costs and you end up significantly out of pocket. And likewise, it's really important that the funds are allocated as accurately as possible so as many people as possible can benefit from this scheme. Liz, Helen, do you have any input to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say that part of the assessment, assessors will be looking at value for money. So you have to make sure that the costs, external costs, are as realistic as possible and that the budget is proportionate to the outcomes. It will be looked at assessments. I would encourage you to be as realistic as possible.
Fantastic. That's brilliant, Helen. Thank you. And it kind of leads me to think that these projects are absolutely not designed to be making a profit in any way, shape, or form, but you can potentially, for instance, through event ticket sales, earn money through it. But then you really need to be clear how that money would be reinvested to benefit the project. And it's not for the benefit of individual businesses, it's absolutely for the benefit of your target group. So underrepresented people, underrepresented areas, that kind of thing. So as Helen's quite rightly said there, it's value for money. Is really, really important. But please be as accurate as you possibly can. Brilliant question, though. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question. In the Entrepreneurial Education Fund, we've covered this a couple of times already, I think, but I appreciate the question. And the Entrepreneurial Education Fund is the age range up to 18 for young people. Is anyone older than 18 years of age? They cannot participate. I would go to Liz for this one.
Again, the guidance is very clear. It's age 3 to 18, Donna, for the
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial Education Fund. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. I know you've answered that a couple of times already,
No
but
problem.
thank you. Good
No
just
problem.
to get that extra clarification. Bronwyn has sent an email already about it, so that's fantastic. We can get back to her through that if it's not already been dealt with. Last year, next question. Last year, there was a login system used. Is it a similar process this time? Some in the team using it reported that it was a bit tricky for larger organizations and wondered if there was an alternative way to send the application form. I would say that it is absolutely the same system. And if there's any issues where you're finding it tricky, please just email us and let us know. We've got a great team here who are really supportive and we will do our absolute best to help you. But it is the same login system. So as I mentioned earlier, please make sure the person applying is the main contact and it's your email that will be used throughout the project duration as a contact. Liz, Helen, have you got any inputs on that?
Yeah, I think that was a really important point you raised there, Donna. When it was a larger organisation, what sometimes happened is someone, perhaps more senior, who wasn't the project manager, put the application in for the grant fund. And then when it came to delivery of the project, it would be a project manager or maybe a different person. But unfortunately, the contact details we had was for the more senior person doing the application. We have amended the application this time to try and address that. So there may be a grant funder who, or a grant writer who's writing it, but they get the opportunity to name the project manager so that we can then engage with the project manager in that larger organisation. So that should address that. And you want to add, Helen?
Yeah, if the question relates to having multiple logins for the one application, unfortunately that's not permitted. What I would encourage you to do to overcome that is to email the email address on the contact us page for your specific fund, and we can send you a PDF or a Word document of the application that you can work on off work on offline and share departmentally to allow you to complete that. And then the project lead can complete the application online.
Well, fantastic, Liz and Helen. That's really useful. Thank you for that added information. That's definitely very helpful. We've got another question here. What happens if the project is given a go-ahead, but for some reason the delivery is not successful? For instance, unable to recruit sufficient participants, lead applicant situation changes, etc. A fantastic question, and as we all know, life does happen and things change and come up unexpectedly. What I would highlight is that through Inspirent, any successful applicant is awarded support from an individual from the Inspirent team. So where your personal contact, you can raise any issues with us, ask any questions, and we will do our absolute best to support you. What we do is we have regular monthly catch-ups that we schedule in advance so that we are there to have a nice friendly chat with you, find out how you're getting on, and then you can share any worries or concerns with us. If you were to stop your project at any point because of unforeseen issues, we would be keen to find that out as soon as possible, because that money could potentially be reallocated to somebody else who could benefit from it, who has submitted an application that has ticked all the relevant boxes and has scored really highly. But you know, we understand life happens, but you do have that support from an Inspirent team member, and we are very friendly and supportive. So the door is always open to have those chats, and then we'll help you and look for potential solutions. It may be that you could join up with another program and deliver something together. So our focus is very much solution orientated and trying to keep things as successful as possible for everybody.
That's a
So
great
I
answer,
hope that
Donna.
answers.
Thank you. And one of the other things I would say, one of the benefits of the early launch of the fund, this is the earliest the funds have been ever been launched. It gives participants and awardees the opportunity to have almost a full year to run their programmes. That's a first for the Scottish Government, and it's a really great place to be. So that means that if there are hiccups, then, you know, we've got an opportunity, as Donna said, we've got the opportunity to support you with that. But it also means that if in the event that someone can't spend the grant they've been awarded, then those that are on the waiting list still have a reasonable amount of time to then, you know, get the award and instigate their project, and they'll still have a good time to do that. But we will work with all awardees to support them through their projects and any issues that they might be facing.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Liz. That's really useful. Another brilliant question. I'm loving these questions. There's so many different ones. Would the community fund only be suitable for enabling activity that occurs solely within Scotland? Would activities such as supporting networking or knowledge sharing for Scottish communities with wider UK or international communities be eligible? I'm just going to remind you to have a look through all the terms and conditions and the guidance notes on each one. You know, it's very, very clear what can be supported and what cannot be supported, and what is eligible. And one of the main purposes of the community fund is to support local grassroots activity within Scotland and to remove barriers for underrepresented groups and entrepreneurship. So if you can link something specifically to that within the criteria, within the restrictions and within the eligibility of the fund, then, you know, you're more than welcome to do that. But I would say for some of the schemes, overseas international opportunities are absolutely fine. For others, potentially not. So I would thoroughly recommend that, depending what you've got in mind, because that's quite a general sort of statement there that, you know, there's lots of different things that could come under that. But I would just thoroughly recommend you read line by line of the guidance notes and the FAQs. Liz, Helen, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I think you've answered that really well. It is quite a broad question, so without the specifics, it'd be very difficult to comment any further on that, Donna. I don't know if Paul's on the call or if he wanted to comment, but I think you've actually answered it really well.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Thank you. And bear in mind that the government are looking for innovation and creative ideas.
Yes.
So, you know, and if you don't apply, you definitely won't get. So, but again, just refer to the guidance and then do your best to submit it. And as Liz and Helen have both mentioned earlier, remember, you can always email us. We cannot give advice on, you know, individual applications or content, but if you're specifically worried about eligibility, then we can maybe run through the eligibility criteria with you. A great question, though. Thank you. Moving on, can you confirm if you will support industry specific projects, not only general entrepreneurial support? Absolutely. So long as you are ticking the boxes as per the guidance on the fund. So, looking at who the grant scheme's for, there's very much for the Ecosystem Fund, women's entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial education remain strategic priorities. So if you read through those notes and check, then absolutely something that's specifically for a certain industry would be more than welcome to apply for that. But just be mindful of the actual aims of the scheme that you're applying for. But great question. Liz, Helen, anything to add?
Not happy with that, Donna.
Perfect. Moving on then. Next question. We understand that providing proprietary software may not be an eligible cost. If the tech were provided free of charge by an applicant, would it still be acceptable to apply for funding for the outreach, partnership work, and delivery activities that all hinge on the tech? Sorry for the clunky question. Not a clunky question at all. A fantastic question. Depending on what you're applying for, some software would actually be eligible, but capital costs are not. So things like new laptops, specific equipment, that would not be eligible. But if there's particular software that you need to run this project and it's an investment for the program or the project to run successfully, then potentially that would be an eligible cost. It depends what scheme you're applying for, what the outlines of it are, but if you give full details in the application, then potentially that could be considered. Liz, Helen, I'll come to your good input on that one. If you've got anything else to add.
I would just add that would be by exception. That there would be anything. It would have to be a very tight alignment and a very strong reason for that, because capital spend, and that includes software, is not eligible under the grants.
Yeah, perfect.
So it would have to be very, very unusual. It would be exception.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Thanks very much. Another question for the Education Fund, is there a possibility for a CPD, continuing professional development element for staff? The main purpose of these funds is to deliver time-limited events, projects, programs, and so any CPD would be as a cost of the educational institution. But that saying that, again, it can be perceived in different ways. If they need specific training to deliver an element of a program, then potentially you could argue that, but my understanding would be not a usual cost. But let's Helen, I'll come to you.
You're right. A CPD is not eligible. That's not the aims of the Entrepreneurial Education Fund, so CPD wouldn't be covered.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Liz. Appreciate that. Another question, can programs be delivered fully remote, or is there a minimum in-person requirement? Fantastic question. Potentially fully remote is an option, depending on, where you're targeting. If it's, for instance, aiming at island groups, and travel is a serious issue, minimal ferries or whatever, then absolutely that would be considered. Just again, make sure that you're ticking all the boxes within the guidance of each grant. Liz, Helen, any input on that?
No, that's absolutely fine, Donna.
Perfect, thanks so much. So moving on to a question from Grant. We have a proposal that comprises 5 different activities that complement each other sequentially and will be delivered by different project teams / partners. Although there will be several core staff who will oversee the delivery of all activities, how would we cost staff time for that? Initial thoughts were to second staff for the duration of different activities. Also, is it possible to provide a number of activities as a shopping list, and although not all may be selected, that 2 or 3 of the activities would be? There's a lot to that question, Grant. Fantastic question, and genuinely really appreciate that. It is quite huge. What I would say is that for staff time, we do request timesheets. So anybody who's working on anything specific for your project should be recording the hours that they're working. So they wouldn't necessarily need to be seconded, for X number of days or weeks or months to something. It could be part of their week that goes towards it so that they're still able to do their usual day-to-day tasks. But it would just be important for you to monitor the time spent on each task. We would not usually look for a shopping list of things. We would be looking for you to be really clear as to what you would want the funding for, because the grant funding you get is specifically to fund certain things, and you do need to, usually spend the money first and then claim it back. So you need to be very clear what you want that money for. Liz, Helen, I'll come to you in case it's quite a long question. If you'd like me to repeat it, please let me know.
I would just encourage, I think we covered this earlier, but I would
Yeah.
encourage you to be as accurate as possible when you're submitting your milestones and budget claim. Plan your resources accurately, record them accurately in the milestone and budget elements within the application. As I mentioned earlier, value for money will be assessed. So make sure
Fantastic.
that what you're submitting is what you expect to draw down.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Helen. It sounds very exciting. There's lots going on there, which is amazing. I'm going to come to you, Liz and Helen, for the next question from Pauline. Who will be assessing the applications?
Well, as a first pass, Inspirent will be we'll be doing the due diligence, and beyond that, we don't know who else will be doing it. There's 3 stages here, and that's not on us. That's on the Scottish Government to decide who's assessing it. But these are experts in their fields who understand what a good project looks like.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. We're having the same question again from somebody who wants clarification. I think we made this clear earlier, but just to highlight again, what is the total fund value, not the limits per application? My understanding is we're not able to answer
We're
that
not able to
question.
share that. No.
Yeah. Thanks so much. But I appreciate you asking, and it is an interesting question.
It is an interesting question, Donna, but we have to remember we're dealing with the Scottish Government here who have lots of budgets and checks and balances to do. So these things can be moving and a moving feast over periods of time. So we're not able to give any definitive answer as to what pots of money are available for each of the funds.
I really appreciate that, Liz. Thanks for answering that again. Another question, when completing the grant application, if we do not yet have exact costs, such as venue hire because numbers are not confirmed, should we estimate the budget based on the maximum scale of the project? For example, if we plan for 50 attendees and budget accordingly, but only 45 attend on the day, would we then simply claim the actual cost incurred for 45 participants? In that case, we would not necessarily draw down the full amount of the grant that was approved. Fantastic question that applies, I'm sure, to most people. So thank you for asking that. We realise that you may not either get the numbers you hope for, or you may actually be oversubscribed and get more than you expected to get. So just to reiterate what my colleague Helen said earlier, be as accurate as you possibly can. And if you're looking to hire a venue, contact them and ask what the options are. It might be a buffet that covers up to, between 40 and 50 people or whatever, but you might know exactly which room you want to hire. So that would have a set cost. Be as accurate as you can, but we fully appreciate that, things might not be exact. But as I mentioned earlier, you will be awarded an Inspirent member of the team, and we will work with you. So as if you think you're going to have an underspend and you can't reinvest that in your project, then we will speak about that with you, and that's absolutely fine. We fully appreciate that, but just be as realistic as you can. Liz, Helen, do you have anything else to add to that one?
No, great answer, Donna.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Another great question here. These are fantastic questions. Understand the age limit for the education fund. Is there similar for the Pathways Fund? Also loving all this information. I appreciate that. Thank you. There's no age limit on who can be supported, and people of any age can start their own business. And so, my understanding is there's no age limit on the Pathways Fund. Liz, Helen, have I got that right?
That's correct, Donna. There's no
Perfect.
mention of age in the Pathways Fund.
Perfect. Just to say, in one of my previous jobs, I had a client who was in their 80s starting their own business. So the sky's the limit. Lots of opportunities out there for everybody. Next question from Maggie. Can you apply for multiple funds if the criteria fits the grant applied for? Fantastic question. Just to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, the project needs to be very different, but you can absolutely apply for multiple funds, but not for the same project. So just make sure that you take the time to go through the specific grant information, because it can be a little bit different for each of the grants, so don't assume it's the same for each one, and just make sure that you're applying for what you think is most suitable for you. But absolutely, you're welcome to submit multiple funds either to the same scheme for completely different projects or to different schemes, but they've all got very different kind of purposes and eligibility, etc. So there should be differences there that will help you decide if you know which one you should most suitably apply for. Liz, Helen, anything else?
No, that was a great answer again, Donna.
And I'm seeing somebody saying there's no option for them to unmute, and but I can, if you let me know what your name is, who wants to talk, then I can go down and allow you to talk on the system. So I see there were a few people who had their hand up earlier, but I'm afraid I'm not able to see that on my system. But what I'll do is I'll finish answering these questions, and then if you can type your name into the chat, then I can allow the option for you to talk. I can't unmute everybody, or there would be so much background noise that we wouldn't be able to hear. But I'm more than happy to do that. Because it's an anonymous attendee who has put that in, I can't even allow you to talk just now. I'm so sorry. But if you put your name in the chat, I can find you on the list, and then I can absolutely open that option for you to chat, and I appreciate that. Adekemi, I hope I've pronounced that right. We aim to set up a trade fair in summer for BAME. Will that be eligible? A fantastic idea. I would absolutely encourage you to read the terms and conditions of the grants, because it's very specific as to what the purpose of each one is. Supporting BAME, underrepresented groups, everybody who comes under that absolutely would be eligible, but it depends on the specific project. So I would thoroughly recommend that you read the finer details and just make sure you know what the grant is for and what kind of money you would be looking for to enable that to happen. Just make sure that the project you want to apply for is eligible. Liz, Helen, please feel free to say anything along the
For
way.
specific questions like that, Donna, I would just exactly what you've said. You know, a trade fair is a very broad thing. It's not
Yeah.
something we can give an answer to on a webinar like this. So read the criteria, the eligibility, and then, if appropriate, apply.
Perfect. Thanks so much. For the education fund, that's the same question coming through again. Is there a possibility for a CPD element for staff? We've answered that one already. That would be a no. Where are these questions loading out? I'm not sure what you mean, but I'm seeing them under the Q&A section. I'm not quite sure what that means, so please feel free to add another question later to explain that. Moving on to Kirsty, as part of the Pathways Fund, is it an option to use the funds to offer grants to individuals participating in the programme? It's not clear in the guidance. I'm going to come to you, Helen and Liz, for that one, please.
Again, it very much depends on the project, and and I think you mentioned Pathways there, Donna.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, you did. So, you know, I'll give an example of one that was awarded last year, and it would come under the community fund. So it was a community meetup. People bought their plates of soup, and those that participated were able to do a pitch about their business, and they were given a very small grant. That was written within the application as a key part of the delivery mechanism, and therefore it was approved by the assessors. So it would have to be very clear. This fund isn't intended to be a sub-grant fund for other, but if it's relevant to the programme you're running and you're giving small amounts of money to beneficiaries for relevant purposes, then that would be considered.
Fantastic example there, Liz. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Another question from Kirsty. If looking at a programme of events, will it be acceptable to put in an anticipated month of delivery for each event? It's very difficult at this point to nail down exact dates and venues. Brilliant question. Fully understand that. You do not have to state specific dates, but what we would be looking for is to make sure that everything is signed, sealed and delivered by the end of March 2027, and also that you're very clear about the number of events and, you know, any costs involved with that. So location, for instance, just make sure that you're very clear about the number so that it's very closely aligned to the grant that you're requesting. But fully appreciate that dates may need to be confirmed. The more specific you are, the better, but we fully appreciate that that's very hard. You would need to know if you got the funding first before you can book things. But so long as you're very clear about the number of events or programs that you want to deliver, then that would be absolutely fine. Just as a note, I read the fund supports projects that strengthen entrepreneurial education across ages 3 to 18 and vocational education SCQF levels 1 to 8 as possibly and either 3 to 18 or vocational education. That's right, it does say that in the guidelines. Liz, Helen, I'll come to you. I'm not sure actually what the
I'm not sure
question
what the
is there.
question
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not understanding the question, Donna. So if that person could formulate a question, I'd be happy to
Yeah.
address it.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I just realised that when I was asking you, I was like, actually,
No
I'm not sure what the
problem.
question there is.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Yeah, please feel free to put another question in. Our project scored on the number of participants we are able to support from Candice. Our project scored on the number of participants we're able to support. No, they're not. There is no specific number of participants that we are able to support. The quality of each project is very much scored on its own merits. And so there's no specific number. We will not be, we score everybody equally. We would not be restricting
Yeah.
it depending how many numbers
I
come in.
think yeah, you're 100% right, Donna. The key thing here is innovation and plugging gaps within the support system and seeking out underrepresented groups. It's not about numbers. It's not a numbers game. It's about quality. It's about innovation, and it's about the target beneficiaries receiving significant, or relevant outputs and impact on them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That there seems to be a number of questions about this, Liz, so bear with me when I ask it.
No
But
problem.
there's others asking about the educational fund, basically the up to age 18 question. The guidance talks about vocational programs up to SCQF level 7 to 8. SCQF level 8 in college would often be over 18, which is a fair point. So it's just double checking the eligibility for that.
Yeah, I think we have to go with the age. It's 3 to 18. And I understand that those qualifications named there would potentially be much older individuals that would be taking that. But I have to go with what's on there in terms of I mean, that age is not an excluder, it wouldn't exclude people from doing an SCPF level 7. So I'm going with the hard line of the facts that are in the guidance, 3 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. On ecosystem fund, if the focus is courses and programs, would building networks or infrastructure designed to become self-sustaining and lasting become ineligible? I'm just going to reread that, sorry. On the ecosystem fund, if the focus is courses and programs, would building networks or infrastructure designed to become self-sustaining and lasting become ineligible? What we would be looking for in your applications is to, depending on the project or the program, is to say what your future plans would be. Now, that may involve you seeking sponsorship or becoming self-sustaining through income that you earn yourselves or through looking for future funding partners, that kind of thing. I hope that answers your question. Liz,
Yeah,
Helen, feel free to come in on that one.
absolutely, Donna. I think that's a really good question. What is important, you wouldn't be ineligible if you couldn't demonstrate that there was some hope of future programs. What we're looking to do, very successful projects and innovative programs, we would want them to continue. And if you can, suggest that there might be ways to do that through, leveraging in private sector funding or starting to charge for your programme going forward beyond the period of the grant, then these are things that we would encourage because we want the ecosystem to be strengthened. We want these projects that are innovative and creative to continue beyond the period of the grant funding.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Sorry I arrived late. I hope I didn't miss this. Not a problem. We're glad you're here now. We were funded last year. Will that affect our chance of being funded again this year? We did cover this earlier, so you may have heard this, so apologies if I'm repeating this. But you're more than welcome to apply again, but it would either have to be for a completely different project or something that is substantially more than it was last year with regards to something completely new or something much chunkier, for want of a better word. Rather than just more of the same. I'll come to Liz in case you have anything else to add.
No, that's perfect, Donna.
Okay, brilliant.
Perfect.
Thank you. Colin McDonald, somebody's thanked us, then they have to leave, not a problem. Colin McDonald, CPD not being eligible, is that for the delivery team, or could a programme be to offer CPD to a range of companies and their staff to help the whole sector? My understanding is that would not be eligible.
Yeah.
The focus of the grant is really important, that you read each grant scheme and find out what it's about and what it's for and who's supposed to benefit and what the outcomes of that will be. But it's very specific. The benefits are supposed to be within each grant eligibility criterion for specific
Yes.
things. Liz,
Yeah,
have you
you're
got anything
100%.
else to add?
You're right, Donna. This isn't aimed at CPD. It's aimed at supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem and community across Scotland. It's not for personal CPD development.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks very, very much. Another question, could one bid project for entrepreneurial fund, same structured program, could have option within that bid, sorry, bear with me, for its capacity? Similar question as I've heard, or does it have to have a final cost, i.e. the option to support 1,000 young people or 10,000 young people, but it's the same program, as this doesn't seem to be allowed over two bids, as it would not be distinct from the other. You can apply to more than one grant scheme, but it has to be very clear what you're applying for, and there would not really be any sense to apply for the same thing if it's just for a different number of people, because then you should presumably just be going for the maximum amount that you think you would need and incorporating, if it's the exact same project, then incorporating all elements of that, a smaller event linking up to a larger event, and then apply for the scheme that's got the larger fund that you'd still be eligible to apply for. Liz, Helen, have you got any additional comments on that?
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's one project, and that's
Yeah.
where you would use the milestone table. That you would deliver your event for targeting the 1,000, and use the milestone table for the costs attributable to that, and then move on to the next milestones for the costs attributable to the other project within that that's targeting the 10,000. And if the delivery of that moves after award, then you have your appointed business growth partner who will support you with any changes to that.
Fantastic, Helen. Thanks so much. Just to highlight, I'm coming to the last question now. So if anybody would like me to unmute you, please put your name in the chat now and I will find you and unmute you. No problem at all. And apologies for that restriction. Final question that I've got just now from Pauline. For the previous education fund, we had a short timeline to deliver. Absolutely, the grants were awarded later in the year. Fully appreciate that. Therefore, our project is only really just getting started. Therefore, it would be a shame that the fund is only supporting completely new projects. Could we enhance, develop the current project? We have only been running for 3 months and finish in March 2026. Sorry for asking this again, not a problem. Just to highlight, the timeline was clear for the previous grant. So as tough as it is that, that was made publicly available, that you would have that time limit to complete projects within. As Liz said at the start of the call, luckily and thankfully this year you do have most of the financial year to be able to complete things, which I appreciate does give you more scope. So again, if you're applying for something new, and I appreciate you've said that this has been answered before, but I appreciate what you're saying there. It really, you have to highlight why, the developments and what you're going to achieve that the current project didn't achieve. If it's just to complete what you'd already applied for funding for, then it is highly unlikely that would be successful, because that should have been completed within your original application. However, if you can say, yeah, we've done great things, we've made an amazing impact, it's been really positive, and then you can link that to one of the new schemes and just focus on new developments or something that you could bring that would be different, then that would be amazing. What the government doesn't want to do is just fund the same thing over and over. They're looking for gaps to be filled. They're looking for innovation, creativity. They're looking to support underrepresented groups, underrepresented areas, rural areas, some parts of cities and towns and all of that. I hope that answers. Liz, Helen, have you got any input to add to that?
Well, I think you're right, Donna. We didn't deliver the education fund that's been, spent at the minute. But I think it was launched in August, and it was made very clear that it would have to be spent by March 31st, 26. So unfortunately, we can't do anything about that.
I appreciate what you're saying, Pauline. There's just come in with another point. Decisions were received later than expected. I appreciate that. There may have been a bit of a delay there. But just as we've said there, have a look at, we are keen to support as many people as we can, and we've got an open mind to everybody applying. So please have a look at the grant criteria, see if you can meet these things, and bear in mind that, the same thing wouldn't be funded again, but you might feel that you've had a really strong foundation and can come up with something really innovative and great that would meet the eligibility, etc. One more question, sorry, that was a point from Pauline. Your website says the fund has an initial allocation for 2026, 2027. Can you advise what that is? These projects usually run within the financial year, and so this one, decisions are supposed to be given out to applicants in May, and then all projects would need to be completed by the end of March, meaning all funds are applied for, and then you've got until the end of April 2027 if you've got any additional supporting, which would only be available after you've completely wound everything up. I hope that answers the question. We've got less people on the call now, so what I'm going to do is if there's anybody who wants to talk, please put your name in that. I appreciate you thanking us there, Pauline. I appreciate it's a difficult situation, but I very much hope that you find a way to reapply if you feel you'd be eligible for that. Can anybody let me know in the chat box if you would like me to unmute you, and then I can unmute you, no problem. I'm loath to unmute everybody in case there's lots of background noise. I'm not seeing any names in the chat, and I'm unable to see anybody with their hand raised. So I'll put it back to you, Liz, but I'll keep an eye in the chat box in case anybody adds their name in the meantime.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks so
Donna.
much.
Donna, thank you. Thank you to everyone that submitted questions. Those are fantastic questions, and hopefully we managed to cover all of them. Donna, I think you did a fantastic job there, moderating the chat and answering those questions and getting back to everybody. So thank you. That was really well done. So the next steps for those that remain on the call are to apply for your ecosystem grant fund, and you can do that on the ecosystem website, which is detailed there, ecosystemfund.co.uk. When you're on that page, you will see 4 distinct funds, and you can get into each of those, read the guidance, the frequently asked questions, and the terms and conditions, and that will help you to decide which fund or how many funds that you might want to apply for. As I said earlier, you can register and then start your application. You can save it and come out of the platform and go back in at a later date. There are frequently asked questions on there, and there are application support is available online, and each fund has its own distinct mailbox. So you can hit the Contact Us button, and that will take you to the link to the email box for each fund. And if you've got any further questions, you can submit them on there, and our team will get back to you with those. So if you'd like to follow Inspirent on the socials, you'll see our LinkedIn, our Facebook, and our Instagram, X, and TikTok there. We do use LinkedIn a lot for updates and various announcements on there. So keep an eye and follow us as we progress with the grant applications and the awards in May. And just remember that final deadline date of 5 p.m. on the 26th of March 2026. That's a hard stop. There'll be no further applications accepted beyond 5 p.m. and the platform will close for applications at that time on the 26th of March. So just remains for me to thank Donna again for a fantastic job, and Helen in supporting me and answering the questions here, and also all of you for showing interest in each of the funds. Good luck with all your applications. We're looking forward to reading them and finding out about all those exciting projects that are being thought up and being planned as we speak. So thanks, everyone.
Liz, I really appreciate that. Just to say, one more question came in while you were talking there.
Okay.
From Kirsty. I look after the Business Gateway service in Aberdeen City and Shire. We are looking at submitting an application, which would be great, but equally would also be keen to be aware of other applications, awards, so that we can support and promote projects as appropriate. My understanding from that is just what's available, and that is all on the Ecosystem Fund website. And as Liz mentioned there, if you follow the Inspirent socials and also the Scottish Government, you'll hear about more schemes that way. Does that answer that question, Liz? Helen, please feel free to add to that.
I think it does. I think they're looking to find out who the awardees are. They will be published online after the awards are made, and each
Perfect. Yeah.
awardee is allocated a business growth partner, and our business growth partners are very experienced with Business Gateway and would absolutely encourage each of the awardees, if they're not already engaged with Business Gateway, to do so.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
And like Liz mentioned earlier, the Scottish Government website, everyone who has been awarded funding will be announced on there as per previous years. Sorry, Liz, carry on. Sorry.
the other thing I might say is that what we did for the current awardees, we had a collaboration event in November in Edinburgh, and we invited all awardees along to that, along with key stakeholders and partners to participate in that event. And we were fortunate enough to have Anna Stewart speak at that event. So in all likelihood, there'll be a similar event organised for the awardees for 26-27.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. There's no more questions.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, and have a good evening. Thank you.